this is Pug Dog here, and this is Adventures in Backpacking, where my husband Northstar and I share our love of backpacking in the outdoors. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button below if you would like to follow along with us on our favorite hikes. So Northstar and I have hiked the Long Trail the summer of 2018 and the summer of 2019. 2018 going Sobo and 2019 going Nobo. We spent a lot of time up north in Vermont and on the Long Trail, and we decided to do a video series answering some of the most common questions we come across about the Long Trail. A big thank you to everyone on the Long Trail Facebook groups that contributed questions and feedback to use to form this video series. Part 1 of this series is going to be about logistics and planning. If you're on Facebook and you're not a member of any of the Long Trail Facebook pages, you definitely should check them out. They are the Long Trail Hiking GMC Community, Long Trail Hikers Class of 2020 if you're planning on hiking this year, and Women of Vermont's Long Trail. So my first topic will be maps and other resources. Northstar and I used 3 resources for planning for the Long Trail. We used the GMC's Long Trail Guide. We used the GMC's waterproof Long Trail map. And we also used the Guidebooks app. So the GMC Long Trail Guide is great for planning your shelters, knowing where you can legally stealth camp, your resupply towns. It's also great for looking at book time so that you know where the most difficult sections are and where it will take you the most time to hike. So we also used Guidebooks both in our planning of the trip and on the trail. So Guidebooks is great because it gives you mileages for all of the waypoints along the trail. So shelters and water sources and resupply towns and points of interest and vistas and anything you can think of, it's on the Guidebooks app. Another awesome benefit of Guidebooks is that fellow hikers can leave up-to-date comments. Like, for example, if a water source is dry, or where they resupplied in town, or where they found cell service, which is a very common comment you find on Guidebooks. And speaking of cell service, quite a few people asked about cell service, and we found that at least one time a day we could find cell service, and at most shelters we were able to get cell service to send a text message or even make a phone call if it was good service. The best thing about Guidebooks is that you can use it in airplane mode. The only downside is that it does have a minimal cost. I think it's like $10. So one resource that a lot of people use that we did not use, and that's the End-to-Enders Guide, also put out by the GMC. Regardless of what resources you use, make sure that you use the most updated version of the resource. So another common question was, how much of the hike did you plan ahead of time? And Northstar and I are planners, and before a hike, we want to plan how many miles we're going to hike each day and where we're going to end up. But the thing is, you don't know what your day-to-day is going to look like. So even if you do plan every step of the way, which I actually kind of enjoy, I think it's fun, but you don't know what kind of weather you're going to encounter, how you're going to feel each day, how long each day is going to take you. So you can plan ahead of time, but your mileage is not something you should rely on. Something that you should research ahead of time is what the terrain is like, especially if you're not used to hiking in the Northeast. The terrain is very rugged, so definitely do some research into what the terrain is like. And also, if you plan on sending yourself resupply packages, you might want to research where you can ship your resupply packages to pick them up along the way. And speaking of resupply packages, Northstar and I plan on doing a whole video just on our favorite resupply towns. Another question I got was whether I would suggest planning or booking your inns, B&Bs, and hotel stays ahead of time. And that's a funny question for me because every year I want to book some cute B&Bs and some cute inns that I really want to stay at ahead of time. And even though I know my own advice to other people is you can't plan it ahead of time, I always do it anyway. And this past year, we were actually doing more mileage than we expected. And so I think one place that we booked ahead of time, we did have to change it a couple times. So big shout out to Marsha at the Nye Green Valley Bed and Breakfast for being so flexible with our reservation. So no, I would not recommend making your reservations ahead of time. A couple days ahead of time, I think should be fine. Especially with the big towns like Rutland and Manchester, you're going to find some place to stay. Is there room for tents at the shelters? Yes, almost all of the shelters have room for tents, and I would say more people along the Long Trail that we encountered slept in their tents than even in the shelters. There are a couple exceptions at high elevation, like Butler approaching Mansfield does not have any space for tenting, but Twin Brook tent site has tenting. Montclair Glen on Camel's Hump only has room for one tent, and it's a platform. So that brings me to another question that was asked, which is, are there platforms for tents along the Long Trail? And again, it varies. So some places you will encounter wooden platforms, and some sites you will not. Another common question is, should I bring a tent on the Long Trail? And my answer is an emphatic yes. You need to bring a tent on the Long Trail. Because there were many times that we arrived to a full shelter at night. The shelter could be full of Long Trail hikers, weekend hikers, AT thru hikers, Boy Scouts, or college orientation groups. And if you arrive at a completely packed shelter and you don't have a tent, you're going to be forced to walk to the next shelter, which could be as many as 10 miles, regardless of how you're feeling, how much daylight is left, what the weather is like. And that's just not a good situation to put yourself in. So even if you want to save weight by not carrying a tent, at least carry some kind of backup, like a tarp and a bivvy or some kind of emergency system in case you do encounter a full shelter. What is the best month to hike the Long Trail? So I think this is, I don't think there's one right answer to this question. Of course, spring is not a good time to hike the Long Trail because there are some months where the GMC discourages you from hiking to keep from destroying the trail. We've hiked in June, July, August on our thru hikes. June is the earliest I would suggest hiking the Long Trail. The benefits of hiking in June are the cooler days, there's fewer people on the trail, there's more plentiful water sources. Some of the downsides of June are the trail is going to be more muddy. In the beginning of June, you could encounter snow, especially in the north, and the biggest downside of hiking in June, which will probably keep me from thru hiking in June again on the Long Trail, is the bugs. So I'm not like skeevy about bugs. I don't have I know that when you go in the woods, you're going to encounter bugs. But this last summer, when we hiked in June, the bugs were so bad. It almost made me go crazy. You couldn't stop to eat a snack. You couldn't stop to pee. You couldn't stop at all without being swarmed by these little tiny midges that would just attach themselves to your skin. So I would say the downsides of June really outweigh any of the benefits. July and August, late July and August, are really beautiful months to hike. You get longer days, warmer days, more people on the trail, and of course, fewer bugs. And even though statistically July and August are the rainiest months for Vermont, I still think that they are excellent months to hike the Long Trail. We've heard great things about hiking the trail in September. In late September, the colors are starting to change. The temperatures are cool. If you don't like crowds, then it's much less crowded. But the downsides are the days are shorter. There's less daylight hours to hike in. So you have longer time at camp with no daylight hours. It can get pretty cold in September, and even in late September up north, you might even get some snow. So those are the downsides, but we've talked to a lot of people who hiked in September and even in October and really, really loved hiking in those months, despite the cold. All right, maybe the most common question on the Long Trail Facebook page is Nobo or Sobo. So we've done both. Our very first attempt of the Long Trail was in 2017 going Sobo. We did not have enough time to finish. We've thru hiked Sobo and thru hiked Nobo. So we prefer hiking Nobo. It seems to us like the trail was designed for northbounders. So a lot of the trail maintenance, the blazes, the vistas, a lot of it feels, I don't know if this is intentional, but it feels like it was designed for Nobos. Even some of the climbs that were so tough for me going Sobo, like Whiteface. Whiteface was the hardest ascent and descent I feel like I've ever done Sobo, and I was dreading it our entire Nobo this summer. And then we got to it, and it was like, it was so easy. I also think, especially if you're not used to hiking in that kind of terrain, building up your confidence and your ability and your comfort on the trail while the miles are easier in the south is a really, really good idea, which we discounted our first time. So you kind of get used to the trail. You get used to the routine. You get more comfortable and confident with a lot of people around you in the south. And then when you get to the north and it's a lot more challenging, you're ready for that challenge, both physically and mentally. So even though I think you could have a really awesome, fun thru hike going either way, really, if I were to choose, I would suggest Nobo. Can I hike the trail with my dog? We don't have a dog, but we did enjoy coming across many dogs along the trail. And many of the people that we met said that there were some difficult sections for their dogs, but they all had some kind of method of carrying their dogs when there were ladders or big gaps in rocks or really steep sections. Either they were able to carry their dog in their backpack, or they had some kind of harness system to be able to carry their dog, because especially up north or some of the more technical sections like Mansfield, there are some sections that might be really tough for a dog to hike. So definitely plan for that. Research those sections so that you know whether or not your dog can handle it, and have some kind of backup system. Another question is, are permits required? And no, permits are not required. However, the GMC website now states that you do have to have some kind of bear deterrent for your food. So either a bear canister, or you have to have an Ursack or a bear bag with a hanging system. So that is now required on the Long Trail. Some of the shelters do have bear boxes, but where there aren't bear boxes, you are required to hang your food, store it in a canister, or in an Ursack. And the last logistic question that we got was, how long does it take and how many miles should you do per day? So the GMC website states that the average number of days it takes to hike the Long Trail is 20 to 30 days. This summer it took us, I think, 17 or 18 days. And so it really just depends on a lot of things. It depends on your own personal preference. So do you want to hike all day, or do you want to get to camp and sit down and read your book? It depends on how much weight you're carrying, because if you have a lot of weight on your back, you might not want to hike for 12 hours a day. And it depends on what your goals are. So if you just want to be in the woods for as long as possible and just enjoy yourself, then you are going to want to go slower. I think we averaged around 18 to 20 miles a day this summer. But I would say plan for 10 to 15. I think most people plan for 10 to 15, especially in the beginning. You kind of get used to it, and then you can see, do I want to really push myself and do more miles, or do I want to get to camp by 4 o'clock and sit around the fire and get to chat with friendly people? So it really just depends on your own goals, your own physical ability, and you kind of won't know how many miles you're going to feel like you can do, or you're going to feel like you want to do, until you're on the trail. So plan for the 20 to 30 days. Plan to hike 10 to 15 miles a day, if that. Most of the shelters are anywhere from 5 to 10 miles apart. So theoretically, you could hike shelter to shelter and really spread your hike out. You would just have to keep food in mind, because obviously if you're taking it a little bit slower, you're going to have to carry more food and really plan your food drops or your resupply stops strategically. So that is the end of part 1 of this series. Part 2 will include the second half of our frequently asked questions, which all pertain to the category of fear. We also plan on making some other videos like resupply towns, clothing, what we packed in our packs. So stay tuned for those as well. If you have any other questions that we did not answer in this video, please leave them in a comment below, and we will try to answer them in the next video. Like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.